Episode 2, The Haunted Place. Audrey thoughtfully examined the outfits David had carefully left behind for her. He tossed them on the bed and wasn't even embarrassed that I was lying in it. But credit where credit was due, her colleague's antics had managed to distract her from the horror of her dream, and a cold shower finally brought her to her senses. Okay, let's see what sort of costumes they wear to exorcise demonic forces. New girl, capable, confident, credible, true professional. Get everything. Not gonna lie, it's black, so we gonna get it. Should I choose something else? Not bad. I should style my hair in a way that might make the right impressions on my clients. High bun, gathered. Bob, strict. Daring. Complex. Flawless waves, get everything. I'll do... that's a tough one. Okay, you know what? I'll do gathered. Now, to not get lost finding my way to the kitchen. After taking one last look at herself in the mirror, Audrey ran out into the corridor. The kitchen had a homey atmosphere that was unusual for this mysterious place. David, humming softly to himself, was making breakfast. Melancholic Raphael sat at the table, gazing longingly out the window, clearly wishing he were somewhere else. Good morning. Morning. You're just in time. Everything is almost ready. Take a seat, pick whatever you want. No need. I can make my own breakfast. Don't worry, my cooking is not only edible, but also very tasty. I thought you would be most in your element. Find a bar. You know, I do everything well. David smiled slyly, his gaze lingering on her outfit. I was hoping you'd choose that one, of course. But now I'll have to keep a closer eye on you to make sure that no demon tries to drag away such a beauty. Now, hurry up and sit. We have a hard day ahead of us and you need your strength. Take your pick, don't be shy. Okay, let's see what we have here. English breakfast. Pancakes with syrup. Oh. Coffee and waffles. Listen, it was coffee. As soon as you mentioned coffee. Great choice. David turned on the stove, and after some hesitation, Audrey sat down across Raphael. I hope you slept well in your new room. The deathly pale man looked at her with such a dull gaze that it was as if he himself hadn't slept for at least a week. Yes, everything's fine. Thank you for asking. Audrey decided not to say anything about her nightmare. Unsure of what to talk about, she glanced around. A small notebook with a sketch of the landscape outside the window caught her eye. The lines were jagged, broken, as if their artist couldn't draw a single straight line. Then, noticing her gaze, Raphael closed the notepad a little nervously and moved it away. Is he shy about his drawings? Maybe I should encourage him. He seems so unhappy. Wow, you not only play, but also draw? He fidgeted with his fingers under the table, clearly struggling with some emotions. I rarely draw. Sometimes I just want to create something beautiful. Something that will leave a mark on this earth after I am gone. People usually leave behind hairs. Children. His voice sounded comically surprised, as if the idea of fatherhood had never occurred to him. People do that sort of thing much more often than they paint brilliant pictures or compose great symphonies. What about love? You speak as if it doesn't exist. I believe in love, but I don't believe I'll be able to find it in time. Life is too short. Usually people who say that find it completely by accident. Look around, maybe love is already somewhere nearby. He looked longingly into the eyes of his persistent interlocutor. Without meaning to, Audrey could see unspoken feelings swirling inside him, seeping out in music, paintings. You need only listen and look closely to understand exactly why he is trying to tell you. She wanted to take him by the hand and talk to him, ask him what was on his mind, but she didn't want to become a psychologist for this young man who didn't ask for her help. Audrey, Raphael is of delicate character. If you're not careful, he will believe what you tell him. David inserted himself into the conversation so unexpectedly that Audrey did not immediately respond. Sorry, but what's wrong with that? Raphael will end up falling in love and running away to the ends of the earth with his beloved, and who will do his job then? You could hire another appraiser? No one except Raphael can handle it, my dear little witch. So don't sway him to the dark side. The cheerful notes in David's voice hinted at some kind of inside joke, but Audrey didn't see the humor. When David turned away again, she leaned towards Raphael and whispered, "There is no such thing as an irreplaceable person. Trust me, I know. If everything was at the boss's say, I wouldn't be here." But Raphael did not appreciate her frankness. The sadness in his eyes was replaced by a strange, painful determination. "I know that love will only bring pain, both to me and the one who would share that feeling with me. Sorry, I didn't mean to be rude. I'm just terribly tired." With the conversation seemingly over, Raphael reached for his untouched breakfast plate and accidentally nudged a nearby cup of tea. Having caught a dozen of cups over the course of her career, Audrey caught this one too, without spilling its contents. But the clumsy Raphael suddenly performed a miracle of reaction. They caught the cup together. Smiling guiltily, Raphael withdrew his hand, but not immediately, or so it seemed to her. "It's actually nice to feel free of obligations sometimes. Maybe that's why I like music so much. It transports me to a different world, you know?" "I think so, yeah." "And I'd be glad to share that tiny escape from reality with you sometime." "Absolutely." After a short silence, Raphael finally started eating breakfast. To avoid embarrassing him any further, Audrey stared at David's back. Out of the corner of her eye, Audrey noticed Raphael lift a spoonful of porridge, only to immediately lower it back onto the plate. His hands are shaking so much. "Excuse me. I'm going to my room." The chair's legs scraped the floor with a loud, unpleasant sound as Raphael abruptly stood up. "Have a good first day, Audrey." After following him to the door with an alarmed look on her face, Audrey turned to David. "Is he okay?" Never mind him. Raphael always gets nervous when he plans his pointless conversations with his father. David didn't seem to care at all. As if nothing had happened, he put the plates on the table and took on his modest breakfast, a cup of coffee. Audrey got started on her own, and although David clearly loved to show off, breakfast turned out to be very tasty indeed. Do they have a complicated relationship, Raphael and his father? You could say that. If you stay, you could probably help him sort out his feelings. Family therapy is not my specialty, I'm afraid. David chuckled, trying to hide his smile behind his cup. I doubt his father will show up. A belated realization pierced painfully through her. Is he dead? My, aren't you curious? David picked up the dirty cups and dishes, putting an end to the conversation. And don't lose that enthusiasm on your way to the client. He's right. Why did I bother him with questions? Don't worry, I won't. Let's go. The drive took about an hour. For most of the ride, the newly formed team rode in silence, only occasionally exchanging thoughts about the task ahead. Then, just 5 minutes away from reaching their destination, David realized that he hadn't briefed Audrey on the case. Not at all embarrassed by the driver's stunned stare, he explained that it was extremely important not to touch anything suspicious in haunted houses, or things that look too old or too beautiful. And if you hear an object calling out to you and promising to fulfill your every desire, be sure to tell me. If I hear something like that, the first thing I'm going to do is tell a therapist. Don't wander around the house without me. It would break my heart to lose such a wonderful appraiser. I promise not to get lost or break your heart. I really hope so. Realizing the ambiguity of her phrase, Audrey nervously fell silent, but David didn't seem to pay it any mind. And the most important thing that you must understand is that you and I are not the only one looking for the possessed, but also those who have been possessed before. That's why it's important that you find out if some kind of illness is interfering with our case, so we don't waste any time. We're looking for traces of supernatural, I remember. Even saying it out loud sounds incredibly stupid. This one's a tough one. Maybe someday I'll get used to it. People get used to everything. Well, it seems we have arrived. Along the way, Audrey had imagined what the haunted place would be like. Her imagination had painted some truly terrible pictures for her. But inside the house was actually quite ordinary. Simple layout, inexpensive furniture, bright rooms. The client made a fuss around David, bombarding him with hysterical phrases. Audrey stood silently nearby, studying the man's behavior. He didn't seem to notice her at all. He's displaying half the symptoms of a nervous breakdown. I beg you, rid me of the horrors of this house. I would love to move out right now, but I invested all my money into it, and now I can't even afford a lousy place to stay. Oh, that lying, filthy realtor needs to give me back every penny and pay me for emotional damages. As soon as the client stopped his hysteria and mentioned money, David's expression became predatory. And how much do you want on top? I want to take everything from him. Then we'll take everything from him. Audrey gave her partner a sideways glance. There was something terrifying in his quiet, confident voice for a moment. She felt uncomfortable. At night, there's this vile stench, and I hear a grinding sound. The demon is constantly whispering, moaning, laughing. No matter what room I go into, it follows me. And how long have you been hearing these sounds? The client shuddered and shifted his frightened gaze to her, as if noticing her for the first time. Excuse me, but who are you, anyway? He really has trouble grasping reality. He did call her an appraiser in the car. An appraiser. An appraiser? Are you appraising my home? Yes, your home, and also your stress levels. All of this is necessary to draw up a competent legal claim, and issuing a hefty bill. In any case, you'll have to answer a few questions for my colleague. Well, if it's necessary. Make yourself comfortable while I inspect the house. After inviting them to take a seat on the sofa as if it were his own, David left. The client stared at Audrey with undisguised suspicion. I'm not gonna put you in a psychiatric hospital, God. He doesn't look like he'll behave unpredictably, but I should ask my questions carefully. Have you described your situation to anyone other than us? Do you keep in touch with your loved ones? What happened outside the house? Describe your physical condition. Have you described... I'm gonna go with the last one. Of course not. I'm not an idiot. I know what it looks like from the outside. His responses are reasonable. His speech is not slurred. His logic is present, despite the fact that he hasn't slept in days. After asking a few more questions, Audrey called David over and asked the client to let them talk in private. Well, what do you think? This is unlikely to be schizophrenia. I would say that this is a result of some kind of stress. Maybe he started having problems in his personal life or at work. I'll try to find out. It would be nice, of course, to conduct a proper medical examination, an MRI of the brain, some blood tests. He hasn't been sleeping, and sooner or later insomnia can lead to stranger things than these. There's something to that. What about you? Did you find anything interesting? I did. I heard a creak in the basement. Audrey tried to put a neutral expression on her face, but her voice still came out skeptical. Maybe it's mice? Yes, mice, opening tiny doors to their holes. I don't know, David, but he doesn't seem to be of unsound mind. Which means there is a reasonable explanation for this, we just don't see it yet. Then we will. Soon. Well, since you heard something in the basement, let's go to the basement then. Don't worry. If things start getting dicey, we'll call Cassiel. Assuming we even get a chance to call him, of course. Not appreciating the joke, Audrey rolled her eyes and led the way into the corridor. The basement smelled damp and moldy. Boards that lined the room had begun to rot. Not the best choice of materials for this room. Boxes containing all sorts of things stood in high, unstable piles. Alright, might be here for a while. If you don't know what to look for, then yes. Audrey looked into some labeled boxes. Everything inside was neatly folded. The contents of each box corresponded to their labels, which made searching much easier. What do you think will be more useful? I think we should look at the layout of the house, look through the accounts, look through photographs. Look through the accounts. What does she mean by that? But I'll look at the layout of the house. Audrey laid out a large sheet of blueprints on the floor. At first glance, everything looked normal, but her instincts told her to take a closer look. David, look here. Judging by these numbers, the basement should be much larger. David appeared behind her as quickly as if he had always been there. Someone shaved off 10 square meters, eh? Well done. Your eyes aren't just beautiful, they're insightful too. If only we could talk to the previous owner of the house. David looked at the yellowed newspaper clippings with delight. What are you talking about? Turns out this is the second owner our demon has annoyed the hell out of. He literally made the first one disappear. Meaning, our dear client may be hiding his experiences with his mystical friend from the rest of the world, but the previous owner did not. In fact, he was telling everyone about how a demon was after him. He even became famous for trying to forcefully drag a priest in here. David handed the psychologist a newspaper clipping with a photograph of a man being led to a police car in handcuffs. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, sunken cheeks, disheveled hair. And a year ago he disappeared. His wife sold the house. If the client read this article, he could have been influenced by it. Let's test your theory. I just noticed a strange gap in the wall. With a single tug, David ripped out a rotten board and peered into the resulting opening. Look, seems we found another hallway. After tearing off a few more planks, David beckoned Audrey to follow him and immediately vanished into the darkness. Come on, my dear little witch, don't be afraid. Maybe going in there isn't the best idea. The sudden realization that she really was afraid of facing some kind of demon washed over her with a sobering wave. Get real, it's just a house, an old house showing its age. I live somewhere like this, and I know that houses creak and groan and knock. I'm coming. The hallway wasn't as dark as she had imagined. The light they had turned on in the basement seeped through the cracks, walking carefully on the uneven floor strewn with strange debris. Audrey quickly caught up with David. He was waiting for her and hadn't gone far. Just watch your step. Of course. Audrey looked both at her feet and around her, trying her best not to touch anything. You really don't want to step on a rusty nail or anything. David walked lightly and naturally like a dancer. Meanwhile, Audrey was in constant fear of twisting her ankle. And, as it turned out, her worries weren't unfounded. As soon as she was distracted, her foot slipped treacherously off the solid ground and into a shallow hole in the floor. In an instant, David was at her side. He grabbed her by the waist and effortlessly helped her to free her foot. "Are you hurt?" Their faces were so close that David's voice dropped to a whisper. Audrey involuntarily responded, just as quietly. "No, everything is fine. Why won't he let me go?" "Don't move away." "Thank you." "Scared?" "Nope." David leaned in close to her ear and tickled her skin with his hot breath. "Then why are you trembling?" Audrey herself did not understand why her body was suddenly responding to his touch that way. She wanted to break out of his tight embrace, but she also wanted to stay in it longer. His hands rested gently on her waist, not gripping tightly, and her skin remembered his touch and how easily he'd lifted her into the air. So strong. Even though through the thick fabric of his suit, she could feel the searing heat emanating from him. Maybe I'm afraid of seeing the demon at the end of the hall. In his hands, Audrey experienced an inexplicable range of emotions, but fear was definitely not one of them. "Don't be afraid, Audrey. He probably looks human." David pulled away, but only to look into her eyes, like an ordinary person possessed by an extraordinary entity. In the surrounding darkness, David's eyes suddenly looked frighteningly black. Two bottomless pits. What have I gotten myself into? And if it gets really scary, close your eyes, Audrey. Close your eyes and don't think about anything. Not understanding why, Audrey obeyed. His partner's smug face disappeared, leaving only his minty breath. It ran along her cheekbones, touching the tip of her nose, her chin. As if taking advantage of the opportunity, he shamelessly studied the features of her face. It's like a kind of hypnosis. The walls of the already narrow hallway felt as if they were shrinking, pushing their bodies together. Or did we get closer on our own? Her thoughts drifted somewhere far away. They dissolved into a strange, inexplicable desire to snuggle closer together. And when you open them, Audrey, I'll have it all figured out. She opened her eyes and stared at her partner. She noted, without meaning to, almost chaste distance between them. Was it really my imagination? David let go of her waist and smiled innocently. "And please, watch your step, or I'll never take you or anyone else on such an exciting adventure with me again." You've piqued David's interest. David glanced at her again, and making sure she was okay, he continued on his way. But then he stopped again almost immediately. Trying to keep up, Audrey almost crashed into his back. "Hey, what are you—" "Quiet!" Somewhere beneath their feet, a faint, hysterical laughter could be heard. For a moment, the psychologist's hair stood on end. God, where's that sound coming from? "Hush, little witch. Don't scare our demon away." But where is it? It seems that it is where it should be. Underground. And how do we get there? We will sneak around very quietly like mice. I'm sure we'll find a little further on. David, who was already moving, was so quiet that he even seemed to have stopped breathing. Audrey flinched every time another piece of debris crunched under her feet. And here is our creaky door. Audrey didn't see a door, but she followed David's gaze and realized they still had to go underground. Under his feet, there was a cast iron hatch with a heavy ring in the middle. "You can stay here and guard the exit if you're afraid to go down." Audrey immediately imagined someone else's head poking out of the hatch instead of David's. Now she would run and tear down the narrow passage back to the basement. As if I'm not afraid. "Then please, follow me." With a terrible, deafening creak, David lifted the hatch and, without a moment's doubt, plunged waist deep into the ominous, pitch-black darkness. I hope this hatch doesn't lead straight to hell. A second after David's head disappeared into the darkness, Audrey immediately followed. She felt as if she were being enveloped in cold, wet matter. Her palms stuck to the ice-cold ladder, her legs kept slipping off. It's like I'm stepping into a grave. When the steps ended, Audrey crouched down, supporting herself with one leg and trying to find the ground with the other. But there was nothing there. How am I supposed to jump? How far down is the ground? Suddenly, familiar hands grabbed her by the waist and gently placed her on the ground. Barely holding back a frightening scream, Audrey turned around in indignation and almost collided with David's face. Do you want to stay like this for a little while longer, or shall we keep going? She carefully freed herself from his hands. By all means, let's get this over with quickly. Her eyes adjusted quickly to the darkness, and after a minute, Audrey began to make out the outlines of the walls and moving silhouette of her partner. A light loomed in the distance. The closer they got, the clearer its source became. It was a door, faint glow seeping through its cracks. Now stay here. Audrey stopped obediently, but as soon as David grabbed the door handle, her legs carried her forward. One look over David's shoulder was enough for her to understand what was going on here. The room was littered with garbage. An overgrown, dirty man who vaguely resembled a human was scurrying around it. It seems we found the missing owner of the house. Finally noticing the uninvited guest, the man backed away towards the wall in fear, but stumbled and fell on his back. Demon, oh, you found me, you hellspawn! He shrieked and stamped his heels against the floor, crawling further away, never taking his eyes off David. I'm afraid you have me confused with someone else. Smiling charmingly and ignoring the man's pathetic resistance, David lifted the man to his feet and shook him lightly. Come on, Audrey. Go back upstairs. We'll be right behind you. The man noticed her and was about to rush towards her, but David deftly grabbed him by the scruff of the neck like a kitten. What are you standing around for? Run! Call for help! Audrey froze in shock. His words suddenly resonated with a strange pain in her soul. Slowly, like a worm, one of her oldest buried memories emerged. The same dirty, shaggy creature looked at her from the depths of the basement, trying to convince her that it was a human being. Fingers black with dirt and blood scratched the concrete floor, trying to reach out and grab her. And the chain was pulled so tight that it seemed like the thin neck of the tortured creature was about to snap. It's just a dream. Help me! Noticing that his partner did not share his excitement, but instead looked like she was about to faint, David shook the man so hard that he quieted down. Audrey, this is not a demon. This is the owner of the house. An ordinary person, do you hear? Audrey bit hard on her cheek to hold back her tears, whispering more to herself than anyone else. I know, it's always just a person. Trying not to show any fear, Audrey turned around and trudged back on weak legs. I don't understand. How could someone sell a house with a person inside of it? Well, if that person is confined to a basement, doesn't bother anyone, why not? The realtor knew about him. I'm sure of it. I don't think it's worth talking to the poor man's wife. Therese left them. I'm sure they're hiding somewhere together. The client kept glancing at the previous owner of the house. He sat on the floor, resigned, rocking back and forth. Audrey, where should we do with our basement-dwelling friend? Isn't it obvious? I wouldn't say relatives. I'd say get him to a hospital, then his relatives. He needs medical attention. David discussed further action with the client, purely legal matters, and then took out his mobile phone. After waiting for the ambulance to arrive, Audrey handed the former owner of the house over to the medical personnel and called a taxi. Well, shall we meet in court? With a charming smile, David extended his hand to the client. The client shook his hand firmly, then turned to the psychologist. Thank you so much. Without you, I would have definitely lost my mind. You did good, Andre. Let's go home. All in all, it didn't go too badly. I think I know what I'm going to tell Mikkel. Detective agency. After grabbing a snack at the cafe, the newly formed team hurried to report back to their boss on a job well done. Without knocking, David looked into Mikkel's office, then closed the door and leaned against the wall. He's a little busy right now. Let's wait in the corridor. Audrey leaned against the opposite wall and decided to use the break to think about whether she was making the right decision. I could always try to appeal the court's decision and get my license back. For some reason, the thought of it was still possible, or to fight for her medical practice weighed heavily on her heart. What are you thinking about? Oh, work. Do you have any questions? Actually, I do. They barely told me anything about the job, and I was too depressed to ask. What do your cases usually involve? Other than haunted houses? Well, we most often deal with possessions, of course. Of course. If a possessed person has murders on their record, then Cassiel usually handles those cases. And my job is to figure out if our potentially possessed person is sick. Exactly. And if not, we hand them over to the priests. Not the police? Only after the exorcism. We don't need any more corpses. Sounds grim. I agree. But we don't just do grim work. Sometimes we test all kinds of miracles. And you'd be surprised how different miracles can be. I'd be surprised by pretty much any miracle. We also study cursed objects. That is Raphael's area of expertise. What about Mikhail? To listen to what you and I have to say, and then decide if the matter is worth bringing to the higher authorities. Is there someone higher up than Mikhail? There's always someone higher up. Our bosses haven't visited us for a long time, but they will eventually. I can't wait to meet the founders of such an unusual agency. I wouldn't be so eager if I were you. They are not the nicest people. Finally, the door to the office swung open and a woman emerged. What a surprise, Phil. I hope everything worked out this time. In response, the woman grimaced as if the question had caused her physical pain. Oh, as if it wouldn't, David. I love your confidence, even more than your spite. The woman threw her murderous look in his direction, then turned her attention to the new agency employee. Her eyes are furious. Clearly something has made her very angry. Meet her gaze. She raised her chin, curious to see what the woman would do next, but the woman just nodded slightly before rushing down the corridor to the exit. Nice to meet you, too. Who was that? Oh, that's Mikhail's headache. Felonia. Is she his girlfriend or something? She's our informant from the police department. A whirlwind of questions immediately swirled around Audrey's head, but Mikhail's loud voice kept them from escaping. Come in. With his fingers locked together, he listened attentively to the brief retelling of the events that had taken place in the haunted house. So everything went well. Without thinking, Audrey summed it up. I didn't see anything mystical in this case. And it turned out that it was just not the client who needed help, but someone else entirely. But if I happen to witness a miracle, I'll be just as honest about it. David, what do you say? I fully support my partner's words. There's no demonic forces there, and there never were. In that case, I'll ask one last question, Audrey. Would you like to stay and work here? Would I? This job isn't much different from mine. if it's as fun as it was today, or if I can continue to be of use, of course. I'm happy to be a doctor outside of a hospital, and if it turns out your cases are great for that. In that case, it is a pleasure to welcome you to the Astrea Detective Agency. I hope your new position will be invaluable and extremely positive experience. Audrey smiled sincerely back at him. Mikhail was in no hurry to take his eyes off her. It was as if he wanted to tell her something else, but wouldn't bring himself to. I wonder if he would have said something else if David wasn't here. The man's stately figure was like a statue chiseled out of marble, and all his emotions are stored under that stone skin. It's not easy to breach. He was one of those people who possessed enormous strength and steely endurance. It would be so interesting to try and melt his ice and find out what's underneath. Without breaking eye contact, he tilted his head slightly, but that was enough for Audrey to shake off those thoughts. God, what am I thinking? We simply have to throw a party for this occasion. Mikhail turned his tired gaze to David. Do whatever you think is necessary, but not within these walls. David didn't seem at all surprised or upset by that answer. Oh, I'll find somewhere to unwind outside of this dreary place. Do you have any more questions, Audrey? I'm just curious, what's our next case? David clicked his tongue loudly and answered in Mikhail's place. My dear little witch, why are you so eager to work so hard, especially when you've just started? You should get comfortable, let the intense events of this day sink in and relax. The monsters are not going anywhere. David is absolutely right. Rest. I won't bother you tomorrow. After saying goodbye to the boss, they left the office. I left you a small gift in your room, several outfits, so that you can look stunning here too. Speaking of gifts, I want you to give me the key to my room. How am I supposed to sneak in and leave gifts for you then? I'm sure you'll think of something. Thank you for your concern. Oh, you're welcome, my dear little witch. Also, bring your dresses for our trip to the club. Who said I was going with you? Oh, then who will keep me company? Raphael has locked himself in his room and is wallowing in his blues. You'd probably have to knock Cassiel out and tie him up if you want to get him to go to the club. And it's better if Mikhail doesn't know exactly where I'm taking you. Okay, I'm intrigued. You did great today, and I'm glad we're on the same team. Alright, get some rest. I'll pick you up tomorrow evening. Audrey sat on the edge of her bed and ran her fingers over the expensive fabric of her new clothes. This is all so unusual. It feels like a dream. Unable to resist, she stood up and tried on the first outfit. Let's see what you brought me this time. Come on, I like the first one. Why are we gonna change her outfit twice in a video? Cute. Temperamental. Unattainable dream. I mean, you're right, dressing like this doesn't exist. I never see it with women anymore. I'm sorry, but it's true. Most coveted. I like it because it's black. Leave me alone. Cute. Then we got temperamental. Hi, we're going to the gym to work out. We'll just go with homie. Should I choose something else? Audrey twirled in front of the mirror. From now on, you will wear this outfit when you're in the house. I definitely need to go out into the city, restock my wardrobe, since I'm going to be here for a while. I can't have David bringing me clothes all the time. I mean, why not? So far, he's got great taste. After laying out the rest of her things, Audrey put her travel bag in the closet. Well, hello, new home. Hello, new life. A wave of relief brought with a slight pang of guilt in the shape of an old friend waiting to meet her. No, not today. I'm too happy to see this page turned. I don't want to go back to the past, even if it's to one of the better parts. Sorry, Ruth. To take her mind off stupid thoughts, Audrey decided to take another walk to the garden that beckoned so persistently from the bedroom window. On her way there, she didn't meet a single inhabitant of the mansion. There wasn't even the sound of a violin coming from the living room. Absolute silence. It feels like I'm all alone in this house. Soft chirping of crickets eased the oppressive loneliness, and Audrey soon felt much better. Peering into the bizarre shadow, she walked until she reached an already familiar place, the statue of an angel. The feeling of peace washed over Audrey. She sat down on the cool bench and closed her eyes. This time, her conscience took her pity on her and allowed her to enjoy a complete absence of thought. Oh, those are good, precious moments. I'm sure this will become my favorite place. At some point, Audrey dozed off. She was brought back to her senses by the sound of a nearby branch cracking. Jumping up from the bench, she listened. The crunch did not repeat, but the rest of the sounds of the garden disappeared. Even the crickets had become eerily silent. There's definitely someone here. A broken branch caught her eye, not too heavy, but weighty enough to hurt. I'll definitely buy pepper spray tomorrow, but for now... I'm not gonna take it. No, I'm good. It's unlikely that a stick can protect me from anything. No, I just don't believe anyone will hurt you. With her back almost leaning against the statue, Audrey peered intently into the thickets of the garden, hoping to see a familiar figure. At least the statue covers me from behind. With each breath, her fear receded further and further until all that remained was a sense of her own absurdity. Maybe I imagined it. I'd better go home and drink some chamomile tea. As soon as she took a step forward, a heavy hand grabbed her shoulder. In her imagination, she vividly saw the marble angel bending over with her with its arm outstretched. Oh my God. Slowly, as if afraid to provoke the inanimate object's attack, she turned around. What's up with your face? Are you alright? You? What are you doing here? Me? This is my place. Your place. Poor guy, they didn't even let you into the house? Damn. Yeah, looks like we didn't get off on the right foot. Look, you just startled me. Who even sneaks up on people like that? Alright, forget it. As if ignoring her, he sat down on the bench where Audrey had been sitting not so long ago. So what now? Should I leave? Not one to give up. Audrey sat down next to him, quietly enjoying his displeased expression. The irrational irritation disappeared as quickly as it appeared. This is his home, after all, and I'm just a guest. I like this place. I feel more relaxed here. Taking a deep breath, he turned his head towards the woman. Do you even know what this statue is? She really wished she did so she could show him up, but she had no idea. Nope. It's a statue of Astrea. The Greek goddess? Without reacting to her answer, he continued, She lived among humans for a long time. She was a deity who descended to Earth to protect the people of this world. And you worship her? If not, why is all this standing here? He looked at her like she was crazy. It's too late to pray to her. The ungrateful creatures disappointed Astrea with her cruelty and wickedness. She left this world long ago, taking with her the golden age of humanity. Not knowing how to respond to the story, which didn't move her at all, she turned away. How am I supposed to react to this legend? I agree. Humanity is becoming less and less a thing lately. She wanted to help people, to give them everything so they wouldn't need anything else. It's a pity that such impulses are usually taken for granted. The angel statue really was painfully sad. It's like we all broke her heart. The silence that followed started to get on her nerves. He stole my tranquility. She wanted to get up and leave, but she didn't want to give up the spot that she had already come to love. How stupid. On impulse, she stood up. No, I'm gonna stay. Standing across from him, she pressed her back against the statue. Maybe you should have other picturesque spots in your garden. I could go there instead. Yes, but I'd advise against stumbling around the garden in the dark. Adorable. Is it even worth trying to get him to talk? Ask about his hand, try and understand him. Share the news that you are now colleagues. I'm gonna try to get to understand him. He seems like a very interesting person. He keeps a lot to himself, though. I'll pretend he's a patient. He's just a normal person, after all. Stealing a glance at his face, the psychologist noticed a scar and a gray strand. How could I have not noticed that right away? It was so unusual to see such a young man carrying such painful imprints of life experiences. How old is he? Can't be more than 30. Behind his defiant behavior, he's hiding some kind of pain. It's so obvious, it's funny, I didn't think of it right away. Meeting her gaze, he arched an eyebrow questioningly. Are you going to ask me something? Whether you like it or not, we are going to have to live under the same roof for a while. I don't know why you're so annoyed, but I suspect it's not about me. He turned his gaze to the statue, as if seeking its support or advice. Just try to stay out of trouble, and everything will be fine. So you're the one who's supposed to get us out of the trouble? Everyone in this place, except you, can take care of themselves. Mikhail put a huge responsibility on my shoulders that I didn't ask for. Got it. I'll try not to get into trouble. At least I already know not to pick up objects that try to talk to me. In response to the joke, he sighed in resignation. It would be much easier if you believed in all this. Personally, I don't believe in psychology, but I don't scream at every turn that what you're doing is nonsense. Wait, what? I'll need to talk to you before your next case. Okay. Having calmed down a little, Cassio lowered his tense shoulders. A small victory. Gradually, he's starting to change his opinion of you. I guess. Share the news. I'm sure he already knows, though. I'm now officially a part of your friendly team. I gathered as much. Wow, he's not only strong, but smart, too. But I understand it. You and I work in completely different fields. Poorly hiding his irritation, he suddenly opened up. I have no idea why Mikhail would need an employee like you. But there's a deeper meaning to everything our boss does. Sometimes it's something only he understands. You don't want to try and figure it out. The man slowly shook his head. You'll run away as soon as you encounter something you can't explain. It'll happen, sooner or later. I don't think so. We'll see. You can spend more time with him. Yeah, I know. We already did everything else except for the hand, so... The cold of the statue pierced down to her bone. Shivering, she pulled away from the stone statue and shook herself off. I guess I should go. Suddenly, he stood up as well. I'll walk you home. No need. I don't think anything will happen to me on the way. After a short moment of hesitation, he sat back down. Okay, just go straight home. Okay, Surprised she didn't give a smart-ass response to that. His desire to see her off made her a little nervous. The garden no longer felt like an island of absolute safety and tranquility. Maybe he did this on purpose so that I would spend less time here. Or maybe he did it to protect you, I don't know. Consumed by her thoughts, Audrey quietly reached the corridor leading to the bedrooms. I should take a shower before bed. As she passed the door leading to Cassiel's room, Audrey kept her ears open. A familiar whisper was coming from the adjacent room. Raphael. Remembering his upcoming conversation with his father, she froze. Could his father be here? Hesitant to invade another person's privacy, she began to quietly struggle with her own conscience. Of course, this isn't entirely ethical, and I shouldn't make a habit of doing this, but I don't have the right to know if someone else is in the house. Especially since this is my home now, too. Now that she and her conscience were in agreement, Audrey quietly approached the door. As soon as I hear his father's voice, I'll return to my room. In order to hear the young man what he was saying, she had to press herself against the door. I just hope that Cassiel decides to sit on his beloved bench a little longer. I don't know what to do. Why did you leave me when I needed you so much? Is he talking to himself? I remember every word you said, but it's getting harder and harder for me to believe them. There was a rustling sound, and then there was silence. After standing there for a little while, Audrey was about to leave, but the voice spoke again. It was even softer, but rougher and more guttural, as if each letter was difficult for Raphael to pronounce. I felt blood and death. It's so close I can hear its breathing. It can't be stopped. I don't know how to stop it. Why won't you tell me? Why won't you help me stop this? The voice shrieked and trailed off. What is he talking about? Give me a sign, Father, or tomorrow she will die. Okay, alright, well, that's okay, alright. So far, 5-star. Okay, very interesting. So Faith, we gained 4. Oh, that's what I needed. The statue to suddenly start bleeding. Okay. 2 to reputation, 1 to skepticism. And hey, look, we actually have diamond ad this time. But anyway, without further ado, thanks for watching. If you did enjoy this, please let me know in the comments section below, but also consider liking the video and sharing it. If you want more of this content, make sure to subscribe and check out the description of the video for plenty of assorted things. Otherwise, thank you all once again for watching, and hopefully I'll see you around and catch you in the next video. Peace out.